Hello everyone, it's Kevin Annie Eagle Strong Voice, February 22nd. This is Ash Wednesday. Traditionally in the Christian world, it's a time of mourning. So I think it's appropriate that I read to you today a reflection I did after the anti-war rally in Washington, D.C. a few days ago. It's called How Do We Protest Ourselves? A candid look at the anti-war movement and what lies ahead. And I remember a quote from my friend Daryl Adams, a Vietnam vet, when he said, "Yeah, we brought the war home all right, but it was already here waiting for us." Or Kurt Vonnegut's immortal words, "To be anti-war is like being anti-glacial." Well, my old friend Larry called me up last week with an excitement in his voice I hadn't heard in many years. He was on his way to the February 18th Rage Against the War Machine rally in Washington, and he wanted me to come along. "It'd be like in the 80s, man, only a lot better," Larry effused. "Everybody's so pissed off now." Well, I smiled into the phone as I recalled a much younger Larry, his arm linked in mine as a bunch of us blockaded the entrance of a chemical weapons factory in Calgary in 1983. Plato said that it's only the dead who have seen the end of war. I quoted that to Larry last week, and he got angry at me and called me a pessimist. I prefer realist. Violence may be as American as apple pie, but it's also the goose that's laid the golden egg of its prosperity. America's $1 billion a day arms industry is what sustained its economy, even though it's also bankrupting it now. But let's not pick only on poor Uncle Sam. Adolf Hitler's dubious gift to posterity, the permanent war society, has metastasized across our world and has established the age of the neo-fascist corporatocracy. And now all of us are caught in its systemic violence, like bugs in a deadly web. But in a broad sense, the new geopolitical conflict between America and China isn't a battle between two superpowers as much as a funeral service for a divided, debt-plagued United States. As China's star rises and America tears itself apart domestically, we should recall that it's at such a transitional moment in history that declining powers tend to strike out desperately to preserve their dwindling hegemony. Washington's ridiculous proxy war in the Ukraine is such a telltale indicator. Well, normally war hysteria produces opposition and big peace protests. What's odd these days in America is the lethargy of the response. Less than 1,000 people turned out to the recent Washington rally on which Larry placed his high hopes. The times now are obviously different from the cheerful heyday of the 60s, when over 25,000 protesters massed in Washington soon after America sent its first ground troops into Vietnam. But the diminutive rally on February 18th is a bellwether indicator of a deeper malaise than mere apathy. People know instinctively that listening to the same old speeches for a few hours isn't going to end war. But then stopping war wasn't the aim of the rally. Because if people were serious about putting a spoke in the wheel of the war machine, they wouldn't make speeches. They'd go on strike. They'd help soldiers desert. They'd refuse taxes to the government, and they'd block arms shipments and army recruiting offices with their own bodies. That's what's worked in the past. But of course, such action means putting your life on the line, which privileged people aren't prone to do. Even more basically, Americans stayed away from the recent anti-war rally because they're essentially pragmatic people. They know that war is nothing out of the ordinary. And by that, I mean not just the shooting kind. When the third greatest cause of death in the world today is suicide, and a quarter of young American women are actively planning how to kill themselves, explosions in Kiev and Kharkov are the least of our worries. Stopping war is like light trying to vanquish its own shadow, I said to Larry during our post-mortem reflection. It's better to face the thing in the mirror. Amidst the carnage of the American Civil War, Walt Whitman put it this way: "Oh, I see flashing that this America is only you and me. Its power, weapons, testimony are you and me. Its crimes, lies, thefts, defections are you and me. This war, so bloody and long, is you and me. I dare not shirk any part of myself, nor any part of America, good or bad." Well, embracing who we are and what we profited from is not something criminally complicit folks like us do unless we have to. And even then, we never do. I've learned that the hard way in Canada over the many years that I've fought alongside Indigenous survivors of humanity's oldest war. People like Frank Erminskin. Frank is a homeless Cree man who as a child endured daily starvation and torture in the Catholic death camp called LeJac Indian Residential School, where he buried a lot of other children. Soon after the COVID restrictions were imposed in 2020, Frank said to me, "Now you whites know what it's like to be on the reservation. It's payback for what you did to us, and you ain't seen nothing yet." Well, Frank and those like him are part of the mirror in which we see who we are and what's led us to the present madness. That's no doubt why all of my people ignore him and the truth he embodies. Rather than face and embrace our own shadow, it's so much more comfortable to project it onto the latest scapegoat. Protesting sure beats changing. "Maybe there's nothing we can do anymore," Larry said sadly as we ruminated. "Maybe this is the end, like it's a judgment on us." But after a moment, my friend brightened up and told me of the next big protest that's being planned. But as he says in the book of Galatians, "Do not be deceived, you shall reap what you have sown." Murderbydecree.com. Stand by for more.